We're going to get started in just 1 second. I'm Craig, CEO and co-founder of Growth U, and we put on a number of these events. We try to do like 2 to 3 a month. Today's theme is on landing page work, landing page 101. Aoife Jacob here is our head of activation. We've worked together for quite a while, actually, at a couple companies now, and the way she thinks about activation, product-led growth, and kind of landing pages in general is really, really strong. I'm going to hand it over to you, Aoife, to get going. Enough small talk from me. We'll share membership stuff after if folks are interested, but really this is not a sales pitch. This is mostly a let's get into the weeds on building landing pages and let's do some learning. So I'm going to shut up. Aoife, the stage is yours. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room.
Super. Thanks, Craig. And thanks everyone for joining, particularly if you're at the end of your workday or very early, depending on where in the world. Like Craig said, we haven't done session at 5 o'clock. So if you like it loaded or somewhere in between, do let us know. We try to organize around what suits most people best. But yeah, I guess we'll get into it. And landing page 101 is today's session. So I guess what we're going to cover today is kind of the core components of a landing page. And what I've tried to do with this presentation is keep it as agnostic as possible. So at some stage, we may do deep dives into certain types of landing pages like downloadable assets or webinars and go into depth of what works really well there. But for the purpose of this, I wanted to keep it broad. And if there's particular pages, and I know some of you got in touch prior to the session, and thank you for that, because that's always helpful when we make stuff like this. If there's particular landing pages after the session that you are working on, let us know and we can probably come up with a session more centered around it. So we're going to go through the core components, we're going to go through visuals, and I've separated those out a little bit to the core components, and you'll see why in a second. And then some kind of free tools / cheap tools that I have used and would recommend. We don't do too much tool talk if you've been to our sessions before, purely because startup life is expensive enough without someone trying to push something on you. We don't have any affiliate deals, but any of the tools I mentioned will be free / very low cost. So if you're interested, I've found them helpful and might save you some time. So introduction to landing pages. What is a landing page? It's anywhere you send a lead or prospective lead with the intent of completing a conversion action. And that's a very dictionary defined term for a landing page, but I think it's important to think about because some of the larger problems that I can see when I talk to folks or startups about their landing pages is the intention part and the completion of an action. Some people, myself included, and when I say if I give any bad examples, it's likely from experience as opposed to observation. It's very easy to get stuck into the design elements of a landing page and, oh, this looks great. But the purpose of a landing page is to complete an action. And when we talk about activation as a whole, this is one of the first steps. And if you don't get the first step right, it really doesn't matter how much work you put into your welcome series or your download series or your pricing follow-up. If you're not getting enough people into that almost top of funnel when it comes to activation, that landing page, the rest of the work won't see that reward. So when you're making a landing page, always have it clear into the forefront of your minds that I need someone to do something at the end of it, and every single part of this page should lead them towards that action. And so there's a couple of examples there: webinars, downloadable assets, free trials. I'm sure everyone has their own examples too, but tend not to be the types of pages like a homepage. A homepage is more of that awareness type page where you let people kind of discover your product, discover your brand. A landing page in general should be highly focused on that conversion action. And so general tips on landing pages that convert: give value first or have your user experience that value. And so webinars and downloadable assets are kind of the first to come to mind. And within your business sphere, you may have your own examples, but if you give something to someone, they're much more likely to give you an email address. If you get a free trial, you're much more likely to put in your payment information. If you want something from someone, you will likely have to give them something. No one likes giving away their personal information for free. And so if you're looking for the first place and what to look at, what is it that you're giving that's valuable? And then you can ask for that value. And along that train of thought, solution to problem is also a good way of looking at it. If it's maybe slightly more engaged and involved. If I don't have time to build emails, an email provider that saves me time is a solution to my problem. And so we'll get onto it when we talk about some of the core elements, but solution to problem is also a really, really important way of looking at it. And it's the same train of thought of looking at features to benefits. What is it that you're doing for people as opposed to what you do? And education, right? I am going to give you my information, I likely need to know why. It's kind of self-explanatory, but another common thing that I've seen myself doing and I've seen on other people's landing pages is if I don't know enough about what it is you are or what you do, it's very hard for me to get more involved and give you some information. So make sure that they know at least what it is that you're promising so that they are pretty comfortable. And a stat that I like to throw out here, because I think it's important to keep in mind as you look at your own landing pages and look at A/B testing or refining them, 96% of landing page visits will never convert. That's obviously pie in the sky, very general overview, and that's from HubSpot. So they've clearly a lot of data there to work with. But keep that in mind that this page may not be the one that converts. It may be the third page, it may be the fifth page, but the first one is unlikely to do it. So make it as compelling as you can. But if you're not getting anyone in, realize that it may be just a step in the process, and it may be the process as a whole that needs to be looked at, as opposed to just the landing pages. They very, very rarely sit in isolation. People get to a landing page from somewhere and will likely go somewhere else from it. And so keep that in mind too. Okay, so key components to successful landing pages. Headline. Headline is, I think, if you read any blog post, any website, the first thing you will likely hear about is headline. But it is usually one of the easiest places to see big results and big impacts in terms of what you change. And this quote from, I'm going to mispronounce his name despite him being the leader in thought of advertising, is Ogilvy. 5 times as many people read the headlines as read the body copy. That is your chance to say what you do. And sometimes that is the only chance you will have. The only thing that is assumed is that they will see that headline, and that may be the difference between them jumping to the next page or sticking around to read more. So in terms of kind of best practices, again, back to that benefits versus features, what is it that you can do for them? If I am Slack, yes, you can send messages, but that's not what I do for someone. I make team communication easier, right? Think about what you do, and maybe when I work on landing pages, write down what it is you're trying to do with this landing page. So if you have a downloadable asset, that's what you do, but what does the downloadable asset do? What's the title of your webinar? That's probably not what I lead with. I lead with, what will this webinar achieve for the end user? What is it that I get at the end of it? Because that's realistically what people will care about. Another thing that I see time and time again, and it really doesn't matter if it's me, big companies, small companies, and everything in between, real words. And what I mean by real words is words that you would talk about with other people. There's very few companies that I would describe as a platform. There's very few companies that I would use the word solution directly in. Consumer, these are corporate jargon, for lack of a better expression. And so what you want to do is you want to talk to people like they're people, because they are. And so a lot of these words can kind of disguise and a bit of a get out of jail free card if you don't know what you do and you don't know what you provide, because platform could be anything under the sun. I could be a platform, my company could be a platform, my stairs into my house are a platform, right? Like everything is a platform, but it doesn't actually tell me what I do. So if you're using that type of jargon, look at it, go, what is it that I actually do, and see if you can bring it back to that. The next point here, action-based. It's so much easier to compel a reaction in people if they're getting something from it, if something's going to happen as a result of it. You might save $1 million is not going to be a good headline, because no one wants a maybe. They want something that will happen. They want a definite, they want an action. And so making that as strong as possible will help people stay engaged with you. Focus on the reader and why they should care. Again, this ties into the top. If I'm a small business, I probably don't care about a software solution that helps me scale customer service messages up to 500,000. This comes into what we'll talk about later in terms of where people come from is very important to the landing page, but focus on who's hitting your landing page. If you're going and using it for advertising, what's the actual segmentation that's being used? If maybe you run it yourself, or maybe someone else in your company does paid acquisition, what is being promised on that end? Who are the audience segments they're going after? And see what they want. And the more niche you can make it, the more likely people will relate to it, because it's why they should care. And when we talk about, I guess, solutions to problems, time and money is kind of the go-to. And if you're looking for a place to start on headlines, if you can save someone time, or if you can save someone money, you have a much stronger chance of success, because everyone wants more time and everyone wants more money. And so if you go to Growth University right now, for example, you'll see that our actual headline is Save Time Growing Your Startup. That's going to be constantly worked on and constantly involved, but saving time as a startup, I'm sure most of you would agree, would be a great thing to do. And so it's compelling, and it resonates with a lot of people, and it focuses on the reader. So it kind of ties all those things in together. So these are a couple of examples from a couple of bigger sites, just to kind of give an example. I actually am not in love with Stripes, but I think it works well for their audience, because Stripe is probably not where the mom and pop shop is going. It's probably like the online retailer, someone who probably knows tech a little better is probably going to Stripe. So payments infrastructure for the internet. It's a little bit technical for me, but it does get across what it is we do and where we do it. Ubers, I really like. Get in the driver's seat and get paid. They're getting you money, which is almost as good as saving money. And it's quite clear what they're doing, and it stands out. Dropbox, keep life organized and work moving all in one place. Life organization is the benefit, but it's actually not what Dropbox does. Dropbox is, files and folders and clouds and all that, but that's not what they're saying up front. What they're saying is keep life organized. That's going to save me time. So those are just 3 examples as you go through landing pages that you're making yourself, or if you're looking at competitors, something to keep an eye on how they're describing their benefit, and seeing if you can pull anything in from there. Next is the subheader. So it's usually the smaller text that's just below it. So if you've gotten someone to read your headline, you're doing really well at this stage. You've got them hooked, they're engaged. The subheader is now where you actually talk about what you do. So for example, with Growth University, we say save time growing your startup. Doesn't really talk about what we do, but it's potentially enough to keep you engaged. So this is the part where you flesh out more of what you do, and is slightly more based around your feature set, because now they're engaged with the content. And so best practices, what is it you actually do? The word you is extremely powerful in subheader, because again, you want the person to relate the features back to themselves. The benefit is to them. So are the features going to work for them? And even just using the word you really resonates with people as a reader, and it's kind of one of the copy best practices. The more you can use it, the better it will work for you. Subheader, again, dealing with some concerns. This is a good place because I guess in copy in general, your job is to sell. And as soon as someone reads an almost too good to be true offer, they will immediately start thinking of the negatives about it and the concerns about it. So the sooner you can deal with them within reason, without the focus being prominently on them, the easier it will make the next step process. And social proof and risk minimization are some tactics I think work really well when you're looking at subheaders. So again, some examples from Stripe, Dropbox, and who was my other one? Can't remember now, but I'm sure it'll come to me in a second. Uber, there we go. So Stripe's one first, millions of companies of all sizes, is risk minimization, because I will trust somewhere where other people go. They haven't even told me who at this stage, but if millions of people are using them, I don't have any particular reason to doubt them at this stage. The next one, from startups to Fortune 500s, makes it personalized to me. And then it talks about software and APIs to accept payments, send payouts, and manage business online. They've minimized the risk because I know lots of people use it. I know all types of people use it, and I know what they do. And they've done that in one sentence. It's a little bit of a long sentence, but they've done that in one sentence. Uber, drive on the platform with the largest network of active riders. Driving, I know what they do. Platform, not my favorite word. And then largest network of active riders. They actually haven't told me how many that is. That could be 5 for all I know. But the connotation of saying largest network makes me feel safe in the fact that I'm not the only one doing it, that other people have trusted it, and there's no reason at this stage for me to doubt it. And then Dropbox give you secure access to all your files. That's what they do. Collaborate with friends, family, coworkers from any device. That's something that stood out when Dropbox came out first, because you were able to access it on mobile and desktop. Who I'm doing it with it, again, they're giving me use cases for the product at this stage, which helps me to visualize it better for myself. And again, they've used 2 sentences here, but they've told me why I should use it, how it works, and use cases for it within 3 sentences between the header and subheader. And so they clearly know what they do and what they're about. And so that's what you want to achieve with your subheader. You want to flesh out what it is you do. Next is the call to action. And with the landing page, again, back to kind of what we said was our definition. This is the goal, right? This is it. If there's nothing on your page but a big button, you're kind of halfway there, because that's what you want people to do. And I guess for here, the call to action is fill in an email, book a demo, start a free trial. Those are the types of call to actions that are most common, but the trick is in the name. It's a call to action. And so what you want to do is make, again, that really action-based and make it really concrete. You want someone to do something. And so the more clear and articulate you can be about that in your button or in your call to action, the better it'll work out for you. So use a verb, make it a doing sentence, to bring it back to kind of basic English grammar and vocab. Make it definite, book a call, jump in the car, like make it something that people will do. What happens when they click, and this is one I think that is pretty common that I've seen in landing pages that I've reviewed for people, is like, okay, I'm in. What does that actually mean, right? If my call to action is okay, I'm in, or let's get started, what am I starting? Start sign up. Already it's much clearer about what I'm doing, like check out free trial, use something so that they know what's going to happen when they click, to make it less frictional. They know what's going to happen next. They're not surprised. There's no reason why they wouldn't click that button. Desire and urgency. If you offer a free trial, put the free part in your call to action. If it's limited spots available, either put it just below your call to action or maybe potentially put it in your copy. If it's time limited, put that copy close to your call to action. Make it so compelling that the risk is not clicking as opposed to clicking. What you want at this stage is they know what you do, they know who it's for, they know it's for them. What you want them to do is start doing the action and stand out. And I think this presentation as a whole is not going to go into design a huge amount. And we'll get into that a little bit as to why, but in terms of design feedback, the clearer you can make what you want someone to do visually, the easier it will be to get them to do it. And so, I mean, the most common ways you'll see, and there's a reason they're most common because they are quite effective. If you've got a strong color in your brand guidelines, it should be your call to action. In all likelihood, it should be a different color to probably everything else on your page. Make it so they can't miss it. Put it above the fold, so in that first top part of your page, put it there so they can't miss it. You want this to be the most prominent thing they see on the page pretty much after the headline. And again, here's some of the ones that we saw in our examples. Sign up to drive. I know exactly what's going to happen and I know exactly why I'm doing it. Find the plan for you. It's risk minimized for me because I'm not actually booking into a trial. I'm not getting out my credit card. I'm actually looking at a plan first. So I'm okay with clicking that button because I know I have another page before I'll get it to anything else. Start your website. That one's from WordPress and I really like it. I get to WordPress. What do I want to do? I want to start a website. What's my call to action? Start the website. It's not start now. It's start your website. It's specific to what they do. I know what's about to happen. And once I click that, I'm ready to complete the action. And the more specific you are here, the likelihood that the entire rest of the funnel, as you work your way through whatever that conversion action is, will be stronger because they've agreed to do what you've asked them to do because you've put that up front. And social proof. Social proof is really, really important and can be done a number of ways. And I think the reason why social proof, and the way I like to put it, is people don't believe you. They won't, right? People, we're all like it, right? We go to a website, we read their copy and we go, no, they're not going to do that. Sounds too good to be true. They're just trying to sell me. Your job is to sell. So they're correct. You are trying to sell them. If they're reading a really nicely crafted copy that you've spent a little bit of time on, you are trying to sell. People believe other people. And we saw a little bit this above in the risk minimization. By nature that other people do it, people are much more trusting of what you say. So people trust Uber because everyone gets in an Uber. It's the chicken and the egg. The first person to get into an Uber set the precedent for everyone to do it, because once one person did it, oh, okay, I should do that. Why wouldn't I do it? Someone's done it and it didn't turn out terribly. And so social proof is really, really important. More is usually more. I'm not a designer. There's very few things where I think more is more, but social proof is kind of one of the exceptions. Whatever you can get off your customers, beta users, if it's brand logos, if it's your Google reviews, if you're on Trustpilot, Capterra, it doesn't really matter where it's from, as long as you have some of it. And there's never too late or too early to start asking people for social proof or asking people for a one-sentence review. And the most common ones you'll see is kind of the picture, the name, the title, and the text. Video testimonials work really, really well as well. Usually a bit harder to get off of people because there's a little bit more overhead in it. Brand logos are another very common one that can be easier to get to. So any companies that work with you or use your tools. Companies versus people. Companies tend to be good for your bigger potentially SaaS products. Companies like to know that other companies use it. People are also really effective if I'm an individual looking at something. Visuals will do it better. Having a picture with that text is really, really important, or having that video is really important, because it allows you to put a face to the name. And I know some people talk about potentially even using stock imagery if needed. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it's nicer to have the person who wrote the review, but having a face makes it real. Even if the face isn't real, and there's cases where people use, again, like I said, stock imagery, but seeing someone else and knowing that they use this product and they said this about this product inherently makes you trust something more. And social media, again, is another great place. If, Twitter threads, for example, if someone's tweeting about your product, you can just embed that into your site, and you should do that. That's, in my view, one of the better uses of social proof, because you haven't even asked for it. They can go and see this in the wild. It lives in an environment outside of you. It's the closest thing to word of mouth that you'll get pretty much on the internet. So if you don't have it already, I would highly recommend go looking for it. Check out all of those things. Ask your current customers, hey, is it okay if we even just use your logo? If you're more comfortable or they know you better, ask for a written or video review. But the more of it you can have, usually the better for your landing page. And again, here's a couple of different ways of doing it. From a couple of different companies. The first one, the top left corner, trusted by over 600 million users, which is quite the astonishing number to read out loud. Again, haven't told me exactly who, but I know there's a lot of them, an awful lot of them, and 500,000 teams. Not the most obvious of social proof, but it is social proof. That many people use it, why wouldn't I use it? And you can actually go and click a link and see more, which is that top right where we have the nice, almost animated type drawing. Right, it's a person. Again, this is for Dropbox. I don't see a big computer. I don't see files. I don't see it. What I see is a man on his phone and a dog. That's what resonates with people, because people are men and women and others at home with their pets, using their phones, he's, in my head, he's uploading a picture. He's looking at a family album, right? It's the value is there, even with that simple imagery. And again, this is another from Dropbox on Capterra. It's just a 4-star review. If you have this somewhere, just put it in. It really, really helps. And stars are one of those things that work really, really well to help you visualize if people like a product or not. The next one you'll see below that is from Stripe, and it's just a list of logos of companies that use it. Again, another really good way of social proof. It's kind of the popularity contest mentality of, oh, well, if Google use it, it's good enough for me, or I should use it because Google use it. That may or may not be true, but that is the thinking that goes on by putting some of these logos out there. And again, below that again is Stripe too. And this is kind of some stats on, who uses it, what the uses are. Like that stat for me, 90% of US adults have bought from businesses using Stripe, I think is incredibly compelling. Why wouldn't I use Stripe if 90% of the US population already uses it to buy stuff? I know there's no risk, it's risk minimization. It makes me feel comfortable, and that's the main thing that social proof will do for you. Visuals. This is Humpty Dumpty. For those of you who may not be familiar, I'm hoping most people know the nursery rhyme. And the reason I put Humpty Dumpty in is that picture of the egg. And so this is one of those things you may or may not have heard. It's a good Thanksgiving/holiday fact if you're looking to spark up some conversation. Is the fact in Humpty Dumpty there's no mention of an egg, but we all think about an egg. And I did more research than I should have on why it's an egg and why it's not an egg. But the whole reason I put Humpty Dumpty here is, as soon as you think about the nursery rhyme, you see the image in your head. The copy, the copy, right? You know the nursery rhyme, but the image of the egg is in your head. And so when I think about visuals on a landing page, I think about it in the sense of the copy is going to be what people look at and read, but the egg helps them visualize. And so when you're looking at building a landing page, and again, I'm not a designer, I definitely won't at any stage come on to any of these types of sessions and say that I am. But when I think about visuals, I think about them as helping to tell the story of my copy. And I think visuals in SaaS type enterprises in particular work really, really well when maybe your product is a little bit more complex. And again, as much as you can, I would try refine that header and subheader into as few sentences as possible. But if you need something to show the way through, I'm thinking of, you know, SaaS platforms that work with APIs and how they connect to different apps and stuff like that. That can be quite hard to articulate. And so simple imagery, GIFs, videos can really, really help with that. And I was looking up a few stats before the call. In general, landing pages with videos convert better, but all of those still have copy. So I would say when you're building a landing page, use the copy, do the copy out first. If you are going to create a visual specifically for it, let the copy guide the visual. What is it that your copy potentially can't get to say, or what would you like to really hone in and kind of illuminate in terms of what you provide? Spacing is the other thing I would say in regards to visuals and design. Again, like I said, not a designer. The only design thing I've really resonated with and learned over my time is the more space you can give to the important parts of your landing page, the better. So don't cluster a ton of stuff around your call to action. Leave enough white space around it so they can see it. The same with your text. You shouldn't have a bunch of it so that you're reading and reading and reading and you're not actually seeing what's going on. As minimal as possible will allow people to focus on the things that you've decided are important, as opposed to getting lost in the words, in the imagery, in the graphics, in the fancy animations. Keep it as clean as you can and allow as much space so that people have time to breathe and read what it is that you're trying to say to them. So then we'll get to a few general tips for landing pages. So clarity is king. Say it how it is. I guess I don't know if it's a common term maybe in the US, but in Ireland we like to say don't beat around the bush. Get to the point. People want to know what's in it for them, and usually that's pretty much it. Talk how you're spoken about. So if people are describing you, when you talk to users, if you're doing user feedback sessions, try and make a note of what's the words that are coming up most often. What are people saying that maybe you're not saying, and try use that back into your copy. So the reason we got to saving time was actually that came from a user testimonial. Someone really talked about how much time we had saved them in working on a financial model. So we went, that's the benefit. Like, we're not the ones creating what the benefit has been. We're letting people who are currently using our platform and our product tell us what the benefit is. So if you're talking to users, see if there's any of those types of themes that start to come up in terms of what they're resonating about what you do. I guess with loss aversion, what you're trying to do here is people hate losing stuff more than they hate gaining stuff. And so if you can create something that makes them feel like they're about to lose out, they're much more likely to take that action than if they're about to gain something. So I guess the kind of classic example of this is limited stock available or 5 left. I'm sure we've all been on those websites where there's John Doe bought this product, 4 remaining, right? Loss aversion makes people want it more, even if they don't really want it. So it's a good tactic to try out if it works for your landing pages. Paradox of choice. This plays in a little bit to what I spoke about with the spacing and the call to actions. The more choices you give someone, the less likely they are to make a choice. And so I guess when I think about it, I always think about like a restaurant menu. If there's four options when I get a menu, I'll probably know what I want to eat pretty quickly. If there's 35 options, it'll probably take me 5 to 10 minutes just to read through the options. And now I've got a couple of things I kind of want, and it's the whole decision-making process takes longer. When you're working on landing pages, you don't have the luxury of people are going to sit and read all of your options and see what they want to pick. And maybe I want to contact sales, and maybe I want to book a demo, but actually maybe I want to read customer testimonials. Give them something, give them the one thing you want them to do, and lead them as much as you can to it. I always kind of put an asterisk in, and a lot of people suggest against it, but I personally find it has worked better for me. I would give someone an out of a landing page, but I would give them one out. So I guess the classic example is if you bring them to a landing page, and a lot of people will hide their top menu if it's on their website. I usually would, but I would still link the logo back to the homepage, because what people don't enjoy is being stuck. And you don't want someone who potentially isn't ready being stuck and then to just bounce onto another site completely. By giving them one option out, making it not so prominent, but putting it in a place like linking your logo back to your homepage, it means if they're leaving the page, they're likely going to leave through that avenue, and they're likely going to go back to your homepage and learn more. And as we spoke about, 96% of landing page visits won't convert. So give them an opportunity to go and learn more. And maybe the next time they see a landing page, they'll be ready to convert. But people don't like being stuck. And I'm sure we've all gone through onboarding process and landing pages, and there's only one option and you don't want to do it. The tab is closed, you move on to the next thing. People don't have the time and space to think about whether they're going to do it or not. If they don't want to do it, give them a small out and see what that does for your kind of conversion rates. Point towards the decision. This one I actually mean quite literally. There's been a lot of studies done in terms of visual elements and what helps and what doesn't help with landing pages. And pointing towards a call to action will increase the amount of people who complete the call to action. A face looking at a button will increase the amount of people who will look at the button. People are drawn to look where things are pointed. I don't know if many of you, and again, this probably speaks more to my social media time than anything else, those images that went around for a while where the text was really small and was like, look in the top right corner, look to the bottom left, right? You did it. We all did it, and we end up with someone being like, you spent 20 minutes looking at this image, or some silly saying like that. People will follow visual directions. So if there's a place for you to use them, use them. And the start point looking like the ending point. And I kind of touched at this at the start. When you have a landing page, someone has to find you from somewhere. And so if you're running an ad and you're promising $100 and your colors are green and red, and they get to your landing page and your colors are blue and yellow, and it's actually pay us $100, that's not a good experience. That's a very extreme example, but you want it to be cohesive from start to finish. You want them to hit your ad or to see an events page on your website or the referral link that was in someone's newsletter. That experience should be cohesive from start to finish. So be it with the copy, be it with your branding, be it with your ask and your value proposition. Always check in on whoever's helping guide those people through, if maybe you as well, but keeping that experience as seamless as possible will make people much more comfortable in converting an action. And here's some of the free tools and resources I mentioned. Unbounce Landing Page Analyzer is one that I always like to use. Basically, and I'll send the link out after our session today. But basically, you put in your landing page URL. Unbounce, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a popular landing page tool. We use it here at Growth University. There is a fee associated to it, but it really is quite good if people are looking for a suggestion there. But the landing page analyzer is completely free, doesn't matter what you host on, and it basically will run a score on your titles, your meta descriptions, your spacing, how many call to actions you have. It'll also take into account your Google page speed, which is also really important to keep in mind, particularly if you're using ads to draw to a landing page. And so that's a free tool. If you just Google it, it'll be the first thing that comes up. I'm going to mispronounce these next two words, Flesh Kincaid. I'm getting a nod from Craig, so we'll assume that's correct. That's a reading score analyzer. And so basically you could put your text in, and what will populate is the reading age of someone that would be required to understand the text. There is pretty much no instance where you don't want this to be as low as possible. People don't like reading difficult text, even if they can understand it. And so when you're writing text, I always like to use it as a spot check. Am I using, it's kind of a very basic, am I using too many big words? Is this English a little bit too advanced? Could I explain? I like to use it as would my mother understand what I'm talking about? Would your grandmother, that type of idea where you should make it, would your toddler understand what you do based on this copy? Flesh Kincaid will help you decide who's going to be able to understand your text, and the lower that age is, the better. And again, there's multiple free ones out there. They're pretty common, and particularly I think college students use them a lot because it is one of those things, particularly if you are doing a lot of copy, that comes up. Hotjar is the next one. Again, free tool, so would highly recommend it. Basically, it will do a heat map of your page to see where people are looking, clicking, and scrolling. There's a couple of lines of code you need to implement first, but it's pretty easy to use. It'll also do some screen recording. So if you're wondering about what the behavior of someone is when they get to your landing page, I think it's $500 a month. I know they changed their plans. The free plan is a little bit different to what it used to be, but 500 recordings, and you can see what people are actually doing, where they're scrolling, if they're landing on this page and navigating to other pages, and you'll be able to get an idea of that pattern of behavior, which is incredibly useful for landing pages. Because I guess the main takeaway I would say with landing pages is test. What resonates with one person won't resonate with someone else. And so the best way to do it is to get as much information, and Hotjar is a really good source for that information. Google Analytics is probably the most well-known of the tools on this page. if you have a website, it's very likely you already have it, but you can get a lot of insights. Again, what's your bounce rate? If you're making changes, is it increasing or is it decreasing your bounce rate? Are you putting some tags on your buttons to identify how many people are clicking through? Those are the types of things you'll want to use Google Analytics for. And again, it's free. So I always try to recommend stuff that anyone can kind of get a hand on. The last two are more inspirational type tools. So Landing Page FYI and Growth.Design. Landing Page FYI has put together a really interesting database of landing pages and sections of landing pages, which I find pretty useful. So if you are looking for inspiration for your webinar page, you can look at webinar pages on Landing Page FYI. But if you're looking for how do they structure testimonials in particular, you can search by section. And so a really good resource, free to use. The team have put together an awesome collection of resources over there. And then the final one is Growth.Design. The folks there have done a really, really cool job of going through the psychology involved with landing pages and series of landing pages. And so I pretty much read anything they come out with as soon as they come out with it. They also do it in a really entertaining style. It's comic book style. And so you'll learn a little bit about user psychology tricks that can help with some of the engagement. Again, I wouldn't say mandatory towards creating a landing page, but definitely interesting stuff to keep in mind. And a couple of the things have worked for me in the past. So it's completely free. I would recommend checking it out. And that is it. I know I speak incredibly fast. So if there is anything anyone would like me to go over, if there's any questions that weren't covered, feel free to come off mute or put them in the chat. But thank you all.
You got a bunch of great, Eva, thank you so much. That was really awesome. Thank you.